Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anurag Chauhan. When I first heard the theme, I smiled because that's what I've been doing for over a decade now. Reimagining, and that is what Humans for Humanity is all about. I started my journey in 2011 when I first read an article which said poor menstrual hygiene was killing over a million of women in our country. And that phrase from the article stayed with me because I kept thinking to myself, in the day and time when everyone is talking about women empowerment, feminism, why no one is talking about so many women dying in our country? And going back, when I first learned about this word women empowerment, I did go back to my mother, because in our school they used to say each time you learn a new word, you have to use it in your day-to-day life. And that's what I did. Going back home, I told my mother, I said, "Ma, I want to come and empower you one day when I grow up." What my mother did next would seem like a punishment, but was a lifelong lesson that I learned. She tied bricks around my waist and asked me to take the round of the garden. After 12 rounds, I was crawling. After the 15th round, I was almost crying. And I was wondering why this woman is punishing me for saying something good. Then in a very dramatical fashion, she said, "You came out of my womb. I kept you in my womb for 9 months. And you literally tore me apart when you came out of me. I don't know what makes you think you can empower me." And that day I realized that I cannot empower my mother or any other woman for that matter, because they are already empowered. They have this strength that we men do not have, is to give birth. And that it's possible because of menstruation, because they are fertile. And every time a woman is called dirty, filthy, untouchable, I want to remind all of us that we are made of the same blood. I want all of you to understand. People usually ask me, why as a man do you have to talk about this? Because this is a woman's problem, they say. First of all, menstruation is not a problem. Poor menstrual hygiene is. And as a man, I think it is very important for all of us to speak. I always tell people that everyone who's born out of a woman's womb has a right to talk about this. Whether you're a man, woman, transgender, whosoever you are, no one should stop you from speaking about menstruation. Now the journey began in 2014 when I started the WASH project, and very slowly and gradually from the small city of Dehradun, we reached to about 7 states of the country. And today we reached to 5 million women across the country. In this process, there are multiple stories, multiple people that we met, multiple experiences that we have shared with individuals. Let me tell you one other story from Rajasthan. While giving a workshop in Rajasthan, a 52-year-old woman walked up to me and said, "Aapko bhi hota hai?" And for a minute I thought she was joking or trying to pull my leg, but she actually did not know that her husband, her son, does not menstruate. When I asked her, "Aapko kaise nahi pata ki aapke husband menstruate nahi karte ya bleed nahi karte?" She said, "Jaise main chupati hu, shayad wo bhi chupate ho." And that was shocking. A 52-year-old woman did not know that men do not menstruate. Another incident is from Saharanpur. A 32-year-old woman came and gave me a big hug during workshop. Now today in India, it is still not very common to get hugs from unknown people. And this was a woman who came and hugged me and said, "Thank you for doing this." Because when the first time she was menstruating, she thought she's about to die. And this trauma stays back forever, which is why we've been working on trauma management on multiple other projects, but trauma management is something that we really focus on while talking about menstruation as well. Now, nutrition is something that a lot of people don't think about, because we think today We have everything. How many times have you thought about the food that you leave on your plate? Because the statistics say that 14% of the population, even today in our country, is malnourished. And there are two reasons. One is poverty, and the second is gender bias. Even today, in our villages, in our slums, in our small towns, women are not given enough food by their own families. A son would get more food, may get a glass of milk, but a woman will not. Irrelevant of their age, a girl always gets less food. And this same girl, when she grows up to become a mother, she's giving birth to a child who's malnourished, which is why nutrition plays a big role in the menstrual hygiene management workshops. We have nutritionists who go around the country with us and make diet charts based on three A's: affordability, accessibility, and availability. Based on the three A's, the diet charts are prepared for women and given to them. Now let me tell you about the problems that we have faced while we were conducting these workshops. Just yesterday we went to 2 slums and villages in Kashipur, and people asked me, "Aapko koi rokta nahi hai ye kaam karne se?" There are communities, there are certain communities who said, "ये हमारी औरतों को आके बिगाड़ रहे हैं," and they threw us out of their villages. Some threw stones on us. But there have been communities, one of the villages called Belaj in Maharashtra, which is towards Lonavala, they welcomed us with dhol. They said, अपनी बहनों की अपने हम शादियों में और बारातों में तो ढोल खूब बजाते हैं, आज आप जो हमारी बहनों के लिए कर रहे हैं, आपके लिए भी बजाकर आपका वेलकम करते हैं. And those are the beautiful experiences that we have shared throughout this journey. Now, in 2018, a study said that poor menstrual hygiene and no access to menstrual hygiene products has become 5th biggest reason in the world for women to die. So in this day and time, when we are sitting at IIM and we're talking about so many things, we're talking about technology, we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about growth of this country, there are women in this country still using sand, ash, dry leaves, coconut husk, and anything that absorbs liquid, even today. There are women who are dying because of poor menstrual hygiene, and still people are not talking about it because they are ashamed, because they think it is backward to talk about this, because they think that this is a dirty talk, because they think this is a woman's problem and not a human problem. So my urge to all of you is that today, from this platform, as many of you can talk about menstruation amongst your sisters, amongst your mothers, amongst your friends. Do that, because let's begin from here. Now, the WASH project has multiple other campaigns. One of the campaigns is breaking the bloody taboos. Now, how many of you have heard this one term that we usually hear, कि रात को नाखून नहीं काटने चाहिए? We have all heard, but how many of you know the reason for that? Because we don't usually ask when we are told something. रात को नाखून इसलिए नहीं काटने चाहिए because there used to be no electricity and there used to be no nail cutters. So people would cut their nails from sharp objects or stones for that matter. And the fear was that you will cut you will injure your finger. Similarly, all the taboos that we hear about menstruation were relevant at one point of time, but today have no relevance. One of the reasons why we women were told not to go inside the kitchen was because everything was done manually. Be it grinding, be it the masalas, everything was done physically. So that was a physical effort that women would take to go to do the kitchen work. But in today's day and time, when everything is automatic, I don't think there's anything which stops a woman to go inside the kitchen. Also, back then, all the families were big families. Today we are living in nuclear families. And men usually don't like going inside the kitchen, which is why it's the woman who has to end up doing everything. maybe working in the kitchen, also running her business, going to the offices. So if a woman will not go inside the kitchen, who will run the house? Is the question that I ask all of you. There are many more taboos, and I don't think this 18 minutes will be enough to talk about those taboos, but I request you all to ask why. Each time you are told something, I think it's very important for us to understand and ask why. We've stopped asking why and just following blindly anything that we've been told. But it's time that you think that God has given us brain, and it's given us the brain because we should ask. We should ask why. In breaking the bloody taboos, we did this one workshop where we made pickles while women were menstruating. And they were of a mindset that this pickle will never will be eaten, will never be fine. They said, "Ye sar jayega bhaiya." But after a few days, when we saw only the pickle made by me was spoiled, because I put my hand on the floor and put it inside the pickle jar. All other bottles were absolutely fine, and they were shocked themselves because they thought that they should not be touching the pickle. They never asked why. So I think it's time for us to ask why and join this movement where we, before we say Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, before we talk about women empowerment, before we talk about feminism, I think it's time that we first talk about menstruation and save their lives. Thank you so much for having me here. Before we end this, I would just like to end this with one beautiful note and something that happened with me at the age of 15. I met His Holiness Dalai Lama when I was 15 years of age. And to be very honest, as a 15-year-old child, I did not know what spirituality was. I did not know what meditation was. I did not even know who Dalai Lama was. But sitting across with him on that table, I was crying for no reason. I did not know why I was crying, and those tears would not stop. And forcefully my friend said, "Ask something. Since you're sitting here, ask something." And that's when I asked him one question. I said, "Where do I find Buddha?" To that he replied, he said, "Each time there's a smile on someone's face, and you are the reason for that smile. For that fraction of moment when that person smiles, you become Buddha. You don't need to go find him." So my request to all of you is to spread smiles. Thank you.